Ukryta sieć, or Hidden Web, a new Polish thriller out in Polish and Irish theaters, stars Magdalena Koleśnik and is based on a book written by Jakub Szamalek, book which I have not read. Story follows Julita, a young journalist who works for a shitty Warsaw tabloid. At the beginning of the film, a famous actor dies in a car crash during the night, and Julita manages to get exclusive photographs of him dead in the car. She, of course, uses those photographs. She publishes them through the tabloid, along with an article speculating on the causes of death. She then tries to go further. She tries to pester the widow for an exclusive interview, and then she starts getting these anonymous warnings to back off this case. And when her computer gets hacked and some private materials released to the public, it becomes very obvious that someone doesn't want her continuing to write about this topic, which has the opposite effect. She goes full investigative journalist to uncover the truth of what's going on. So the trailer for this looked pretty promising, but even though the finished product has some good stuff in it, Magdalena Koleśnik's performance, the supporting cast, cinematography, and the way that light is used to build the atmosphere of a dangerous nighttime sort of paranoid version of Warsaw, the unnerving music which helps build that tension as well. I have to say, despite all these things, I was pretty disappointed. Mainly for reasons that have to do, unfortunately, with the plot itself. I'd break it down into two or three things, depending on how you look at it. First of all, the film spends a good 15 minutes establishing the protagonist as a very unlikable person. Julita is essentially a vulture whose job requires her to abuse the suffering of others, and she's very lighthearted about it. And it's also not a case of her not having other opportunities, because her father repeatedly offers to use his influence in finding her a proper journalistic job. She just doesn't seem interested. So when bad things start happening to her, I found it difficult to care, to feel bad for her. I mean, I didn't think she necessarily deserved all of that, but I also couldn't find that much sympathy for someone so morally questionable. And I think as a creator, when you make the choice to have an unlikable, immoral protagonist in your story, I feel that it's a challenge to draw the audience in. You need to make it somehow interesting, or a cautionary tale, or execute it just brilliantly through performances and cinematography and other stuff. It can be done. I mean, you look at stuff like Taxi Driver, Good Time, Uncut Gems, Nightcrawler, Breaking Bad. There are numerous examples in cinema and television, but I felt that Hidden Web does not pull it off sufficiently. It's lacking in the other departments. Secondly, and this will be a bit spoilery, so if you're not interested in having the story sort of spoiled for you, best turn this review off. The longer the film goes on, the clearer it becomes that everyone in it, save for the protagonist's sister, is morally questionable at best and straight up reprehensible at worst. And the person who is the most ethically or morally correct in the end turns out to be the villain of the film, who, by the way, actively murders people, which is, it's strangely fucked up when you think about it, and I have to wonder whether this was an intended scenario. And finally, the last reason why I have a problem with the plot is that the inciting incident is effectively Julita being hacked, and that becomes the reason she starts investigating this case. But the guy hacks her to keep her from investigating, which again she wouldn't even start doing if he didn't hack her in the first place. So if you think about it, the story is kind of silly, because if the villain just minded his own business and didn't go out of his way to find Julita, to find out who she was, to get her contact info, and then to interact with her, with the protagonist, she would never take steps against him, and he could have just continued doing what he was doing unstopped. And I feel like that's a plot hole considering how otherwise intelligent and capable the antagonist is shown to be. All in all, I think this is a flawed and disappointing film, and it doesn't appear that it has a lot to do with the fact that it's an adaptation, because I imagine the same problems with the writing must have been present in the novel as well. At least I suspect, not having read that. Uh, a shame overall, because there are some good elements about it, but just not nearly enough.